Similar to what I showed you in the previous video, you can use shapes to define the flow of text. And you actually have two options. You can use a shape to put text inside it, or to put text around it. So let me show you how both of these work. First of all, you will need the type tool, and you will need to have a shape already created. And here comes the tricky part. You have to be very careful and keep an eye on your cursor, because that's going to tell you what's going to happen. So if I hover over the edge of this shape, you will see my cursor changes to this. If I click now, this is going to turn this shape into a frame, which will be able to host the text that I'm going to put into it. So essentially it turns this circle into an area type. So if I click on it, that's exactly what happens. And I can make my text smaller, just so we can see it. Maybe even reset the character panel. So I go to character panel, reset panel, and there we have the default Myriad Pro text. Now I can right click and choose field with placeholder text. These are all things that we already talked about. Now you can see that if I use the selection tool and I click somewhere outside, the outline of this circle is gone, and the circle is only used now to define the shape of this text frame. Now you can imagine that you can do this technique with any type of shapes. Now, of course, the text is still editable, so I can make changes to it. I can add my own copy. I can even use threading. You can see the endpoint here. So if I add a little bit more text, after a while, once we have too much text, it will show me the little red plus as usual. So there is overflow within this frame. So even though we started with the circle, it ended up being just a normal area type object. So whatever we've learned about that and formatting paragraphs and characters will still apply here. Now the other technique is a little bit more similar to the previous video where you have text running along a path. Instead here it will run around a shape. So using the type tool, the only difference here is that you again go to the edge of the shape, but instead of just simply clicking there, you would hold down the Alt key or Option key and then click. So just so you can see it better, I'm going to try to get my cursor in a position where it's more visible. So that's again the same cursor that we saw when we had our path created. So I'm just going to click here, again holding down Alt or Option. You click, and then once again the shape itself will disappear and its outline turns into the path where the text is placed. Let me just delete a bit of this text here so we can see it better what is actually happening here. And by using the direct selection tool, I will be able to find both the start and end points of this text. So one thing that I like to do is to set the start point and end point up like this. So at 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock. And that way my text is going to stay on the top of the circle. And if you use center aligned paragraph formatting, then you can make sure that whatever text you have there is going to always be centered on the top of the shape. So if I just select a bit more text and delete it, you can see because of the center aligned option, it's going to always stay in the middle. So I can just increase this slightly so we can see it better and maybe just change it to red. So that was the two different techniques that you can do when you want to use shapes to confine or interact with text. And of course you can always combine these two techniques together as well. So you can have text within a circle and also around it. At the end of this chapter, I'm going to come back to this technique because we are going to design a logo where we will use this concentric alignment of text. In the next video, I will show you another great technique called warp text, with which again you can shape your text.